Dante's Boxing Nation, Dante's Cooking Nation. We are out here. Where are we at?
We're out here in Bangkok.
There you go. She's from Ireland. Matter of fact, introduce yourself to the world.
My name's Hannah and I'm from Ireland and I'm the biggest fan in the country.
You hear that?
Yeah.
Biggest fan?
And I'm from Ireland. Sorry.
No, I can edit it. Don't worry about it. All the way in Bangkok, Thailand, y'all.
No,
I'm gonna get
in
it right.
Ireland as well.
In Ireland, you hear that? DBN is international,
My
guys.
churros are really
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So you all know by now, Jamal Charlo, he went on to the Mike Tyson show. And I'm going to play some of the clips from the show. But before I do, I just want to say this. Whoever advised Jamal Charlo to do the Mike Tyson show, they did him a major disservice. And I'm going to explain why after I play the clip. Now, this is going to be a two-part video. I'm also going to respond to the Canelo Alvarez fans that have been saying in my comment section, why aren't you talking about Jamal Charlo's next opponent? I was gonna do a separate video, but I might as well just do it all in this video. I'm gonna break it down because when they ask that question, what they're really doing is they're trying to compare what Jamal Charlo is doing right now to what Canelo Alvarez has been doing for the last 4 years. I'm gonna completely break that down. But trust me, when it comes to comparing what Canelo Alvarez has been doing to a Jamal Charlo or a Floyd Mayweather or whatever black fighter they like to compare Canelo Alvarez to, all you're gonna do is make Canelo Alvarez look worse. Be careful what you ask for. Let me go ahead and play this clip and let's unpack everything.
You ever think about Benavidez? Would you fight him?
I fight him for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then why you not getting?
You
said
he fight anybody.
He ready.
Right. You know that.
I know, but why they not letting you fight this guy? This guy got me calling him the Mexican monk. Everybody scared of this guy. And I hear you saying you want to fight.
I just think his value is low. It's not worth as much as
God damn,
fighting a fight like Canelo. I'd rather get one of the best in the world right now that got a belt.
Then why you not fighting Canelo?
I'm just waiting. It's not like it was when you was coming up in boxing. Like I gotta go through managers.
Listen, you just start talking about his mother, his family,
that
and you get a fight.
That'll make him not want to fight.
No,
boxing different now.
No, look,
it's different now.
No, but look, I seen him at the fight, the last Canelo fight, and he was over there ringside kind of calling him out. I felt like, I don't know what he said, but it looked like he wanted some of that.
Nah, it was too friendly.
Not up to me,
it was too friendly.
Right,
It's too friendly. You gotta be like the Roberto Duran. Suck this. Give me this, motherfucker. Get in the ring. We signed a contract, bitch.
Right.
When you in this business, your whole purpose is to crush the world to your feet, man. Motherfucker out there think he could beat you. Get the fuck out of here.
Facts.
That's just real talk. That's from a fighting top pedigree perspective.
And you know what? It's easy to create that buzz with the social media too. You
should be fighting. They gonna wait till you get out of your prime, then fight you, man. You should be fighting them right now in the best prime. You should be calling them out.
I think he's the best anyway at that point.
Well, I think that too, but I need him to prove it.
Right.
The world needs him to prove it.
Yeah.
Before he goes to a wheelchair or something, man. Come on, we gotta start fighting.
We the Charlo twins. We known for calling everybody out.
Right.
We can call Canelo out for 5-6 years already.
Then fight the next best guy, the Mexican monster.
Who?
Benavidez.
He ain't no Mexican monster.
Oh, everybody's scared of him. Nobody's fighting him.
We box. We not scared of no human on earth.
Please call these people out. Listen, the whole world's looking at you. Call these people out,
What's up? It's the Jamal the Hitman Charlo. Let's get it. Who want it?
Name them names, man.
They know who they is.
Name the names, please. The names need to be named.
They know who they is.
The Mexican monster.
Mexican monster.
Canelo.
All of them.
Come on, we want Benavidez.
He won't smoke.
He won't the real one of the homie shit. We can get in there and tangle.
Call them some names. Call them some bitches and stuff. Say something else. Call them that. Say something like that.
I don't gotta disrespect them. Let them know. Mike, it ain't like that. It ain't like that no more.
Okay, I'm sorry. Stop for the But listen, this is really a beautiful show today.
Okay, let me start by saying this. Jamal Charlo was completely unprepared to do this interview. he had an opportunity to inform Mike Tyson on so many things that Mike Tyson didn't know. He never talked about the Jaime Munguia fight that he was supposed to get. Actually, according to Jaime Munguia and Golden Boy, they're still negotiating that fight. They said that Selecki, at least the reports are, the Selecki fight, that's plan C. Because originally they said plan A was Canelo and plan B was Jaime Munguia. And Selecki, that's just plan C. They just put that up because they wanted to include Jamal Charlo on the summer list of fights that PBC and Showtime had to offer. Jamal Charlo, he could have also informed Mike Tyson on how he was fighting at 160, he was Canelo Alvarez's mandatory, and instead of Canelo defending his title to fight Charlo, Canelo ended up vacating his belt. And that's the reason why Charlo is the champion at 160 right now. That would have been some extremely informative stuff because, see, Mike Tyson, he doesn't really follow the sport the way you would think he does. He knows like some of the big names, but clearly you can see Tyson doesn't follow the sport like that. Now we get into the David Benavidez situation. You know, Jamal Charlo, he really screwed up when he called out David Benavidez and did not accept the challenge. If Jamal would have never called him out, there would never be any pressure for him to move up to a higher weight class and fight David Benavidez. The only reason why this is making him look bad is because he was the one that initiated the exchange. He was the one that started this, and it backfired on him. Now you got Mike Tyson calling David Benavidez the Mexican monster and basically telling Jamal Charlo to his face that you're afraid of the Mexican monster, because that's what Mike Tyson was basically saying. And Jamal Charlo is sitting over here saying, oh, but he has no value and et cetera, et cetera. When you say things like that, you make yourself look worse. You can't say there's no value in fighting David Benavidez when now you're going to fight against Selesky Majes or whatever. And we know there's no value in fighting him. It makes no sense for Jamal to even be fighting at 160 if you can't get the Jaime Munguia fight. You can't get the Gennady Golovkin fight. You've been chasing the Canelo Alvarez fight for 6 years. What is the point of even staying at 160? I had already told you guys what Jamal Charlo should have done. He should have did the same thing that Demetrius Andrade is doing right now, which is move up to 168, take a top opponent, get acclimated to the weight, and then go after the next big thing, which is David Benavidez, the Mexican monster, as Mike Tyson put it. Every single thing that Mike Tyson said about Jamal Charlo fighting David Benavidez, he was spot on. I've been telling you guys on this channel forever, if Jamal Charlo cannot get the Jaime Munguia fight, the Golovkin fight, the Canelo fight, and if he's not going to fight Demetrius Andrade, the best move would be to move up to 168 and fight David Benavidez. And I didn't even come up with that idea. I got the idea from Jamal Charlo because it was Jamal that came out of nowhere and said that like a year ago. You know, said that he wants to move up to 168 and fight David Benavidez. But he did make it clear that the first time he called him out, he did make it clear that he wanted to fight him for his WBC belt. Of course, you know, David Benavidez, he ended up being stripped of that belt. But still, even later on after that, Jamal then said something like he would break David Benavidez's neck. And this is when David was no longer the champion. If you talk the talk, you got to walk the walk. And that's where Jamal Charlo messed up. And this is the reason why I say he really made a mistake doing this interview, because he was unprepared when Mike Tyson started to ask him, why aren't you fighting the Mexican monster? And once again, you can't use excuses like, oh, there's no value in that fight, when that would be your biggest payday. Not only will it be your biggest payday, but if you were to beat the boogeyman in the division, David Benavidez, that makes you the man at 168. And it puts more pressure on Canelo Alvarez to take the fight, because now you just took out the other boogeyman, that Canelo Alvarez was avoiding. See, I talk to Demetrius Andrade's father, Paul Andrade, on the phone all the time. We talk about this all the time. Demetrius Andrade has put himself in the best position he's ever been in. The fact that DAZN actually rejected his fight against Janibek, for those of you guys who don't know this, DAZN rejected that fight because no one knew who Janibek was, and they were tired of paying Demetrius Andrade all this money for, fights that were not big fights. They did the same thing with Gennady Golovkin. They did the same thing with Canelo Alvarez. So it kind of forced Andrade to move up to 168. So that was the best thing DAZN could have did for Demetrius Andrade. Now he is in the best position he's been in probably in his whole career, because he's going to fight the number one contender, Zach Parker, and then he's going to go directly into a David Benavidez fight. Eddie Hearn has already confirmed this, and Paul Andrade, he tells me all the time, we're definitely fighting him next. We are definitely fighting David Benavidez next. Paul Andrade told me he's been talking on the phone with Jose Benavidez, talking about making that fight after they get past their next fight, assuming that they win, which they will. This could have been Jermall Charlo, but now Jermall Charlo is in a really, really bad situation, because once again, he's at 160, where he can't get any of the top fighters at 160. If he just continues to fight the Seleckies and a whole bunch of no names, then he will end up being completely irrelevant in the sport of boxing. His buzz will continue to die out. Now once again, like I said, they were trying to get the Jaime Munguia fight, which would have been a big fight. But of course, Jaime Munguia didn't take that fight. Now let's go ahead and respond to the Canelo Alvarez fans. When you guys say, oh, make a video on him fighting against Selecki. Once again, they're comparing what Jermall Charlo is doing to what Canelo Alvarez has been doing for 4 years. I told you guys this at the beginning of the video, and I'm gonna tell you again. Whenever you compare Canelo Alvarez's situation to Jermall Charlo's situation, Demetrius Andrade's situation, or even Floyd Mayweather's, which they like to do, all you do is make Canelo Alvarez look even worse. Because Jermall Charlo, we all know that if Jermall was able to pick and choose his opponents, just like Canelo has been able to pick and choose his opponents his entire career, we already know Jermall would have already faced Canelo, he would have already faced Gennady Golovkin, he would have already faced Jaime Munguia, right? When it comes to Canelo Alvarez, at least before the Bivol fight, Canelo Alvarez, he could have went after the best opposition, but instead he purposely chose to pick the weakest links. See, you Canelo Alvarez fans, you can't have it both ways. If you're going to say that Canelo Alvarez is pound for pound the best fighter in the world, then that means you would have to admit that for 6 years, Jermall Charlo has been chasing the best opposition available, pound for pound, in your opinion. And not only just with Canelo, but even with Gennady Golovkin. And this is what I always tell these fans. If you're going to compare anyone to Canelo, the perfect fighter to compare Canelo to would be Gennady Golovkin. Because Gennady Golovkin was in the exact same situation that Canelo Alvarez is in now, where fans were calling him pound for pound the best fighter in the world. He's the greatest. He's this and he's that. He could pick and choose whoever he wanted to fight because everyone wanted to fight him, because of the hype that was behind him, and also because he was a flawed fighter. So a lot of very talented fighters like Andre Ward, obviously they wanted to be the first person to beat him. The same situation with Canelo Alvarez, at least become the second or third person to beat him, if we're including all the controversial wins that Canelo Alvarez got in his career. But getting back to my point, Jermall Charlo was chasing Golovkin when people were saying that Golovkin was pound for pound the best fighter in the world. He was chasing Canelo when fans were saying that he's the best fighter in the world. Canelo is doing the complete opposite. The only reason he's even fighting Bivol right now is because the only options he had on the table from the networks and the promoters was either to fight Charlo, Benavidez, or Bivol and Golovkin. Those were his only options. He wanted to fight Makabu, but no one wanted to pay for that. So Canelo actually embarrassed himself. He had got so comfortable with cherry picking that he really thought he could con the networks and the promoters to pay for a Makabu fight as Canelo's next fight. Just to find out the networks, they did not want that fight because they knew they weren't going to make money off of a fight that no one wanted to watch. Matter of fact, let me put this into a perspective that even you racists can understand. Let's imagine if Canelo Alvarez, since day one, let's just say since after he lost to Floyd Mayweather, Canelo was the boogeyman. Canelo, he has so much confidence that he was the best fighter in the world, and he wanted to prove that he was so much better since he lost to Floyd that he was going after all of the best fighters. He wanted all the smoke. Let's just say it was the Charlo brothers, both of them. Charlo brothers, Andrade, they were all ducking Canelo. Canelo had been calling them out for years. Canelo became their mandatories. They vacated the belts, gave the belt up. Canelo, he keeps calling them out, right? To no avail, he cannot get the fight because they want no smoke with Canelo. So what does Canelo do? He ends up fighting Majes Selecki. Are you going to sit over here and criticize Canelo Alvarez for fighting Selecki in that situation? Of course not. Why? Because you already know that Canelo Alvarez has been chasing the best and the most dangerous fighters in his division. So we can't complain who Canelo fights if we already know who he's been trying to fight. And this is Charlo's situation. Sure, you can say that Charlo, he did duck Andrade. And there's no doubt about it, Jamal Charlo caught cold feet and changed his mind when it came up to moving up to a higher weight class to fight against David Benavidez. But once again, when you say that Canelo is pound for pound the best fighter in the world, and that's who Charlo has been chasing before David Benavidez was even a champion, that would be like some fighter, let's just say if all of these fighters were in the same weight class, that would be like some fighter being accused of ducking Ryan Garcia because he's trying to pursue a Shakur Stevenson fight. That would be the equivalence. That's pretty much what you guys are trying to say when it comes to Jamal Charlo. Once again, you cannot criticize someone for wanting to fight who you say is the best and doing it from day one. Another big difference, once again, since you guys like to compare this situation, Charlo's situation, to Canelo's situation, Jamal Charlo has never vacated his belt to avoid David Benavidez or Demetrius Andrade or anyone. He never vacated his belt to avoid anyone. He can't vacate his belt to avoid David Benavidez because they're not even in the same weight class, right? Jamal Charlo has never turned down a title shot in his division when he was the mandatory, like a Ryan Garcia has done, like a Canelo Alvarez has done. Jamal has never done that. And even though Jamal was the one that made himself look bad and really made it look like he is avoiding David because he called out David Benavidez, you still can't compare that situation to Canelo because they don't even fight in the same weight class. You guys have never heard me accusing someone of ducking someone that's not even in their weight class. When I talk about Canelo and the rest of the boxing world talks about Canelo, we bring up names like Jamal Charlo and Demetrius Andrade because those were the fighters that were in his weight class, in his division. Once again, when Canelo was at 154, the Charlo brothers were champions. Andrade was a champion. They were all calling out the contender, the number one contender, at least for Andrade's belt. They were all calling out Canelo. That's why we brought that up, that he was avoiding them, because they fought in the same weight class and we wanted to see the best fight the best in that weight class, right? When Canelo fought at 160, who were the champions there? Demetrius Andrade and Golovkin. Who was Canelo's mandatory? It was Jamal Charlo, right? So there was no reason to talk about Canelo fighting someone at a higher weight class. He already had smoke in his own weight class. The only time we started to talk about Canelo fighting Benavidez is when he moved up to 168. Something else I noticed with these Canelo Alvarez fans. They'll post comments saying stuff like, oh, Jamal Charlo, he's ducking David Benavidez, with laughing emojis. You know, like they're happy about it. Why would you be happy if you're not getting to see the best fight the best? You know why they're happy, guys? Because these are not boxing fans. These are race fans. They really didn't want to see these fights in the first place. And they look at this as a great distraction to keep attention off of Canelo Alvarez. This is why they're so happy. But once again, it's not the same situation. Because Jamal Charlo has never fought at 168. Once again, Jamal just happened to make himself look worse in this situation. But you're not supposed to be happy if you're not getting to see the best fight the best. We should all be upset. I'm upset. When I first heard Jamal Charlo come out, when he did that interview with Brian Custer, and he said, man, I'm gonna fight David Benavidez. It's gonna be an easy fight. I'm gonna stop him. He's got no defense, etc., etc., etc. Then all of a sudden, like damn near a day later, he retracts almost everything he says. He's not gonna fight him. He starts making up all these excuses. I was upset. I was upset because regardless if Jamal Charlo is gonna win or David Benavidez is gonna win, I wanna know how good both of them are. But these Canelo Alvarez fans, they're happy. They're happy. Once again, even if Benavidez and Charlo are not going to get the biggest fight of their career that propels their career, they're happy because they didn't really want to see the fight in the first place. And this is the reason why I'm happy and still hoping nothing gets in the way of an Andrade versus a Benavidez fight. Something else you Canelo Alvarez fans need to realize when you compare Jamal Charlo to Canelo Alvarez. The standards are set way higher for Canelo because once again, you guys call him pound for pound the best fighter in the world. When it comes to Jamal Charlo, he's not even in the top 10. Even by his own admission, he doesn't see himself in the top 10 when it comes to pound for pound. So why would you be comparing Canelo Alvarez to someone who's not even considered top 10 pound for pound, unless you're admitting that you know that Canelo is not pound for pound one of the best fighters in the world? If anything, it would make more sense to compare Canelo Alvarez to a Terrence Crawford, who is the real pound for pound best fighter in the world. That makes more sense. If Jamal Charlo doesn't get any big fights, it only hurts him. You know, it doesn't really hurt anyone else. But we know that if it was up to Jamal Charlo and he could pick and choose like Canelo Alvarez, he would have already fought Canelo Alvarez. And I can tell you right now, from what I've seen when it comes to Canelo, at 160 and 154, Jamal Charlo would have destroyed Canelo Alvarez. He would have destroyed him. And that's why he didn't fight him. Let's draw a little bit more contrast. Also, remember, guys, it was Canelo Alvarez's trainer who just recently came out and admitted that black fighters are not only difficult to fight, he said they are the most difficult opponents to fight. He said whenever you're fighting against a black fighter, it's going to be a complicated fight. Have you guys ever heard Jamal Charlo's trainer say that about Mexican fighters? You never heard it, right? So once again, if we're drawing a complete dichotomy, this is not even apples and oranges, it's apples and rocks. Now, I know what you're gonna say. You're gonna say, oh yeah, but he's ducking David Benavidez. But you said Canelo Alvarez was better than David Benavidez. You said that he was pound for pound the best fighter in the world. So once again, your logic, it does not add up. According to you, Jamal Charlo, he's going after the best Mexican fighter in the world, according to your logic. When is the last time Canelo Alvarez went after the best black fighter in the world? It was 9 years ago against a small-ass old man named Floyd Money Mayweather. And Canelo couldn't manage to win one single round. And Canelo hasn't tried to fight one single undefeated black fighter since that loss to Floyd Mayweather. So while I will say Jermall Charlo is destroying his career right now, the good news is Demetrius Andrade, he did the right thing. He moved up to 168, and we're going to see, most likely, we're going to see one of the best fights of the year. And that's going to be David Benavidez versus Demetrius Andrade. Boogeyman versus Boogeyman. So that should make a lot of you racist fans happy, right? That should make you happy that someone is fighting against David Benavidez and moving up in weight to do it. Matter of fact, there's another fighter who's already calling out David Benavidez right now, and that's David Morrell. And I'm gonna tell you right now, David Morrell is the most gifted, the most talented fighter at 168 right now. He's calling David Benavidez out right now. So there's a lot of good, talented fighters that are willing to replace Jermall Charlo and take on the challenge to fight against David Benavidez. And once again, this is supposed to make you racist fans happy. But instead, you're only happy when you find out that someone doesn't want the fight because you didn't want to see it in the first place. This goes back to Floyd Mayweather versus Manny Pacquiao. For years and years and years, these same racist fans, they kept saying that Floyd was ducking Manny Pacquiao, even though it was Manny Pacquiao that originally turned down the fight in 2008 because he refused to do random drug testing. But despite all of that, for years and years, these fans kept saying that Floyd Mayweather was ducking him, right? I remember it like it was yesterday. And as soon as the fight was announced, and it's really important to note that even the year that the fight was announced, they were still accusing Floyd of ducking Manny Pacquiao before the fight had been announced, right? So you can't say, oh, well, he's just taking the fight now because of this or that. They were still accusing him of ducking Pacquiao. Soon as that fight was announced, you would have thought they would have been the happiest ones to hear this news. Man, when I reported this breaking news, all those fans that were accusing Floyd Mayweather of ducking Manny Pacquiao, they weren't even showing up in the comment section. They had nothing to say. You know why? Because soon as they knew that fight was announced, they knew that Manny Pacquiao was going to lose. Even Freddie Roach himself, as soon as the fight was announced, the first thing Freddie Roach said is this is going to be a very difficult fight. Floyd Mayweather, he doesn't make that many mistakes, etc., etc. That was the first thing that he said when the fight was announced. We didn't hear that kind of talk from Floyd Mayweather's team, from senior or junior, right? We know what time it is. And that's why these fans, they were not happy because they knew all along, even when they were saying that Floyd was ducking Pacquiao, they knew all along Floyd would beat him. And that's why they're always happy right now when they hear, a fighter like Jermall Charlo say he's not going to move up to 168 and fight David Benavidez, right? They're happy about that. They're happy if George Kambosos doesn't fight Devin Haney to become undisputed and he fights someone else, even if it's Ryan Garcia or some no-name. They would rather that happen because these are race fans. With that being said, I'm gonna wrap this video up, guys. That's all I got for now. I'm on to the next one. All right, now check this out, guys. If you're looking to repair eczema scars, burns and bruises, dark spots and blemishes, then this right here is the perfect product for you guys. It's called Elo Deki Face and Body Oil. Athletes and top-ranking boxers, they're also using it after training to reduce swelling, inflammation, and to ease the pain. So get yours today. Go to elodeki.com, like them on Facebook, and follow them on Instagram. Fellas, I've got some great news for you. If you've lost your hair or have a receding hairline, the time has come when you can finally get your hairline back through a process called scalp micropigmentation. So here's how it works. It's a hair tattoo that replicates the look of your hair follicles when you have fully shaved it down. So to get this hookup, make sure you follow and contact my man Scalp Carolinas on Instagram.
My name's Courtney and you're watching Dante's Boxing Nation.
Love that.